And joining me now is the former spokesperson for the United States mission to the United Nations under the Obama administration, Hagar Chemali. Hagar, it's so good to have you here, and thank you for joining us this early morning. Look, we're anticipating, as we know, an imminent Israeli ground invasion in Gaza. I'd like to ask you, what would the impact be of that escalation in the region? And I specifically want to ask you about Lebanon, because there has been conflict already in terms of skirmishes on the northern border of Israel with Lebanon. And we do know that Hezbollah has a very strong Iran-backed presence up there.
Right. Well, Lebanon is the real wild card here. If I were a U.S. analyst, I would put violence coming from Lebanon toward Israel at moderately likely. And the reason is because Hezbollah is a terrorist organization backed by Iran, and they will look for any opportunity to attack Israel, especially at a moment when all of Israel's resources are dedicated to the south. And the reason for that is because since the end of the Israeli-Hezbollah war, the last one that happened in 2006, we know, I worked in the U.S. government. Hezbollah was under my portfolio in counter-terrorist financing. Hezbollah has been preparing for another showdown. And so while it's not very clear whether they were preparing something along with Hamas. Very clearly, it seems that they knew about what was coming. But it is in their advantage to open this other front. On the flip side, it is not in Israel's advantage to open this other front. I don't think that Israel wants to. You can see from the attacks that have come from Hezbollah and Israel's strikes in response that they've been very measured. Israel's response has been very measured. They don't seem to want an all-out war there. And the reason is because they need to dedicate their resources to one location. And because when you're talking about Hezbollah, if you're targeting them, they're not going to be alone. You've got not just Iran, but you have Syria as well behind them. And the problems that Syria could cause, the problems that Syrian refugees are already causing in Lebanon just in the past few days, where they're also taking advantage of this instability and general lawlessness. And so it's a wild card. It could be very, very complicated.
So the United Nations has said that the evacuation order that's been issued by Israel for such a densely populated area like Gaza, it's impossible. And we've seen the ramifications of what's been happening in Gaza as a result of the bombings by Israel. Innocent lives have been put at risk. Meanwhile, overnight, the IDF has indicated, look, we're going to allow for continued evacuations today in a specific corridor. So what does this move by the IDF signal to you about how they're preparing for a potential ground invasion?
Sure. So it definitely it gives us insight into their plans to really almost level the area that they are going into. And the reason they're doing that, they have four goals here. The first is to defend themselves in general. Let's not forget that Hamas continues to lob rockets into Israel that are going into Israel. Number two, they need to disable Hamas's ability to launch those rockets, to attack Israel in general. Number three, they need to get the hostages released. And number four, they need to send a message that this type of violence, these terrorist attacks will never be allowed again, that Israel will never tolerate it. I should note that for the 5 rounds of violence that you've had between Gaza and Israel has always responded with a very brutal response. It is part of the Israeli playbook when responding to terrorist attacks since Israel's inception. It is not surprising. And Hamas knows that. Hamas deliberately puts mobile launchers in residential areas. They deliberately ask their civilians to stay put. But the one thing here that I find very interesting that is different than the past rounds of violence, obviously how it started, but is the fact, number one, that Israel is asking civilians to get out of the way, even if it's a very short window, by the way. They're asking them to get out of the way because they don't seem to want that criticism. And this is how they are approaching this war. And we could debate the merits of that, but that's what they're trying to say. And the second one I would highlight is that the fact that the U.S. is pressing Israel and Egypt to open a humanitarian corridor. Why? Because the U.S. is not going to push back on Israel in this moment. They're trying to say, we're not going to push back on them, but we want to see civilians saved. So please open this humanitarian corridor.
And let's be clear, Hamas has actually been ordering its residents to stay in Gaza despite what Israel has told them to do. You know, Hagar, as the world is anticipating Israel's potential lengthy campaign in Gaza, what role do you expect the United Nations to play as arbiters of international humanitarian law? We know that the UN has made overtures and has said, please, we need to have, you know, a revisiting of how this is being done, not only by Israel, but obviously the United Nations condemning what Hamas has done.
Sure. I mean, I'm not a big believer that the UN is going to have a lot of influence in making things different for war around the world in general. That was not my view 20 years ago. That is certainly my view now. And you only need to look at Ukraine and Russia to see the fecklessness of the UN on full display. The UN, when I was working in the U.S. government, and like I said, Hamas was in my portfolio, the UN was not helpful in undermining Hamas. They didn't even view it as a terrorist organization. It was a very difficult effort on our part in the U.S. to prove that they were a terrorist organization and to get the Europeans with us and so on. And so I don't expect them to be helpful in that regard. I do expect them to be helpful if a humanitarian corridor is opened. It would be very different. It would make this situation very different. Now, again, not to say that this is necessarily the best strategy. I don't know how Israel will get out of this at the end. Are they going to occupy Gaza? Are they going to rebuild Gaza? Who's going to govern Gaza? These are major questions that are fundamental to Israel's security. But that said, if there is a humanitarian corridor and all of these folks, Gazan civilians, go through, and let's say they go to Egypt, for example, and I think Egypt should seriously consider that, the UN is critical in setting up the tents, the shelter, food, water, having everything ready and trying to provide something until they can return home.